in the dense forests of East Texas, where the whisper of wind carries stories of a long-lost time. The Caddo people lived as they had for centuries, shaping the land around them with care and reverence. Their presence was one with the earth, roots tangled in soil, homes rising from the ground, and rituals whispered to the skies. Long before the first European settlers set foot on their land, the Caddo thrived in their villages. Surrounded by the rolling plains and the towering trees, their people were bound not only by blood but by a shared history, a connection to the land that ran deep, like the rivers that crisscrossed the region. Here among the towering mounds they built in reverence, the Caddo formed a vibrant, intricate society, yet the wind carried with it more than the rustling of leaves. It was a harbinger of change, a change they would soon face, though no one could know how deeply it would shake their world. The earth beneath the Caddo's feet was sacred. It wasn't just soil, it was the foundation of their spirit, their history, their very lives. From the heart of their villages, great mounds rose, built painstakingly over generations. Layer by layer, each mound was more than a pile of dirt. It was a symbol of reverence, a place for their dead to rest among the ancestors, an altar to the gods they worshipped. These towering structures stood as silent witnesses to countless ceremonies where the people gathered to honor the sun, the moon, and the forces that shaped their world. As the sun set, casting a golden hue across the land, the mound seemed to pulse with energy of centuries past. The air grew thick with the scent of burning sage, and the chanting of the elders reverberated across the plains. These were not mere rituals, they were lifelines, the thread connecting their past to the future. But as the days grew shorter, something stirred in the distance, a shadow creeping ever closer to their sacred land. In the heart of Caddo society, power was not determined by a single person, but by a collective spirit. The leaders of each village, known as chiefs, were chosen not only for their wisdom and strength, but for their ability to lead through unity. The Caddo did not rely on one voice, but listened to the counsel of many elders, warriors, farmers, and artisans. It was here, under the canopy of towering trees and beside the ever-flowing rivers, that decisions were made not in haste, but with deliberate care. The air was thick with respect for tradition, and the voices of the council carried the weight of generations. As the firelight flickered on the faces of those gathered, a quiet but powerful understanding passed between them. The well-being of the tribe was a shared responsibility, but even within this close-knit structure, tensions were rising, the winds were shifting, and a new kind of challenge was about to test their unity, one none of them had ever faced before. The field stretched endlessly before them, alive with the hum of 1,000 insects and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. The Caddo had mastered the land, its rhythm, its cycles, its secrets. Corn, beans, and squash grew abundantly in carefully tended rows, their roots intertwined with the Caddo's way of life. They knew when to plant and when to harvest, guided by the seasons, by the stars. The earth whispered its wisdom to them, and in return they gave it their care and respect. Women and men worked side by side, the women weaving baskets from reeds, the men crafting tools for the fields. There was a quiet power in their agriculture. It was not just survival, but a sacred bond between them and the land. Yet as the crops flourished, a subtle shift occurred. There was unease in the air. The harvest had been bountiful, but the balance of nature felt fragile, as though something unseen was drawing near, threatening to disrupt the harmony they had cultivated for centuries. The cattle were not just farmers, hunters, or warriors, they were master traders, their reach extending far beyond the boundaries of their villages. From the winding rivers of Texas to the rolling hills of Arkansas, they exchanged goods with neighboring tribes, weaving a network of commerce that was as intricate as the designs on their pottery. At the heart of their trading were the goods of the land, exquisite pottery, intricately woven textiles, and dried meats, valued not just for their practicality, but for the artistry and care that went into making them. When the sun began to dip behind the trees, Caddo traders gathered near the great rivers, where distant tribes would arrive by canoe or foot, bringing shells, flint, and even salt. The exchanges were more than just business. They were the lifeblood of relationships, bonds forged in shared goods and mutual respect. But as the Caddo bartered with their neighbors, they sensed a change in the air. The traders were not the only ones crossing the rivers. Now something darker was beginning to approach, and the weight of its presence hung over the gathering like a storm on the horizon. The firelight flickered, casting long shadows across the faces of the Caddo as they gathered in the quiet of the night. The air was thick with the scent of burning sage, the smoke curling up toward the stars. As the elders began their prayers, the Caddo worshipped not just gods, but the forces of nature itself, spirits that govern the sun, the moon, the rivers, and the earth. In the silence of the ceremony, each movement was deliberate, each word spoken with reverence. The chant of the elders rose, their voices uniting in a prayer that transcended time. Their beliefs were woven into the very fabric of their lives, guiding them through seasons of harvest and drought, prosperity and hardship. Yet on this night, as the flames danced and the spirits of the earth whispered their ancient wisdom, there was a tension in the air. A feeling that something unseen, something powerful was stirring in the shadows, watching, waiting, and the ever vigilant could only hope their gods would protect them from the unknown forces drawing near. The mounds stood as silent guardians over the Caddo's sacred land, their jagged outlines cutting through the night sky. These towering structures, built by generations of Caddo hands, held the secrets of the past, their soil rich with the remains of ancestors. Beneath the soft glow of the moon, the mounds seemed almost alive, their shapes shifting in the dark like ancient sentinels watching over the people. It was here in the shadow of these sacred earthworks that the Shadow performed their most sacred rituals, offerings to the gods, prayers whispered into the night. The air hummed with reverence. The mounds were more than mere earth. They were the embodiment of the connection to their ancestors, their strengths, their spirit. But now, with the wind carrying whispers of change, the mounds began to feel less like a place of sanctuary and more like a reminder of something lost, something that could never be reclaimed. The shadows that moved across the land now seemed darker, the very ground beneath their feet trembling with an uneasy premonition. The glow of the firelight flickered against the weathered faces of the artisans as they worked, their hands steady, weaving the threads of their culture into every piece. They touched pottery spun on the wheel, shaped with hands that knew the earth as a trusted ally. Every curve and design a reflection of the world they cherished. The rhythmic sound of tools striking echoed through the night, each motion deliberate, each creation a tribute to the gods who had gifted them such craftsmanship. The beads, carved from bone and stone, were not mere adornments, but symbols of status, spiritual power, and identity. As the artisans worked, there was a quiet pride in their eyes, a pride that came from knowing their creations would be passed down through generations. But amid the satisfaction of creation, there was an undercurrent of unease. The art, the culture, everything they held sacred, was now threatened by forces they couldn't yet fully understand. The winds of change had come, and they could feel it, even in the tips of their fingers. As the first whispers of European settlers, the shores of the Caddo's world, it was as though the very earth had been shaken. The air grew thick with uncertainty, the rivers carrying not just fish and trade, but the promises of a future none could foresee. The Caddo, ever wise and resilient, watched from the shadows of their ancient mounds, sensing the shift but unsure of its meaning. At first it was only strange faces, traitors with pale skin who spoke in foreign tongues and carried goods the Caddo had never seen before. Yet as time passed, those faces became more numerous, their presence heavier, pressing down on the Caddo's land, like a storm cloud on the horizon. The old ways, sacred and untouchable for centuries, began to feel fragile, and with each passing day, the winds of change grew stronger, carrying not just the scent of salt water, but the bitter taste of loss. Years passed, and the world of the became a shadow of its former self. Their once proud villagers, with their mounds rising to the sky, now stood quiet and abandoned, their streets empty of the laughter and life that had once filled the air. The land which had been their sanctuary for generations was no longer theirs to claim. Forced westward, the Caddo carried their history with them, though their roots had been ripped from the earth. But even in their displacement, the spirit of the Caddo did not die. They found new ways to preserve their culture, their art, their traditions. The stories of their ancestors, once whispered under the glow of a fire, now echoed in their hearts. They may have been scattered, but their legacy remained unbroken. In the quiet moments of reflection, standing under the vast sky that once held their mounds, they knew that though the earth had changed, the Caddo would endure, forever linked to the land they had once called home. The story of the Caddo is a testament to the resilience of a people whose connection to the earth, to each other and to their past remained unbroken. Even in the face of overwhelming change, though their world was shattered, their spirit endured, carried forward by the generations, who never forgot where they came from. In their struggle, there is a powerful reminder for us all, that no matter how much the world may change, The strength of our roots and the bonds we share with our history can carry us through the darkest of times. The Caddo's legacy teaches us the importance of preserving our cultures, our stories, and our identities, for they are what give us strength in the face of adversity. If the Caddo story resonates with you, if it sparks a fire of inspiration and reflection, take a moment to share it. Like, comment, and subscribe so we can keep their story alive. Together, we carry it forward for the generations to come.